Hey, Grace Quotes. Last time we were together, we talked about some potential biblical responses to these awful school shootings that our country has been experiencing. And I mentioned, number one, we need to get back to what the Bible commands, and that is to honor authority. We can't honor and respect the rules that authority gives us unless we respect authority. Another reason I gave you these things happen is because we are no longer following the two greatest commands, to put God first and others second. We have now put ourselves first, and we worship self. And when you worship self, it leads us into very dangerous situations. Let me give you a third and a fourth reason today briefly. Number three, these events happen because we have depraved hearts. Our hearts are sick, the Bible says. We are born with sick hearts. And the more negativity we will influence our hearts with, in a sense, the sicker they will become, and the sickness will begin to display itself. God puts a tremendous premium on human life, called the sanctity of human life, because all life is created by God. As a matter of fact, when you read the Bible, he tells us to care for the ones that are oftentimes least cared for in our society. Well, what does that say? And I know it's a sensitive issue when we are killing as a society 300 of our weakest Americans every single day through abortion. I think of just recently there was a bill that was introduced to the Senate called the Pain Capable Unborn Child Protection Act, which basically says that little babies at 20 weeks old can experience pain. And it was a plea to say, if we're going to do abortions, can we at least do them before a baby's 20 weeks old? And that was shot down by almost half of our U.S. senators. We are profiting off this. We are nowadays celebrating it. And we are doing nothing to stop the slaughter, the barbaric slaughter in this so-called civilized society of our unborn. How can any legislator stand up on the floor and say there needs to be less bloodshed in our schools when there is so much bloodshed happening in our society amongst our young people, and we as a nation are tolerating that? I'll give you a fourth thing to think about, is that the Bible teaches that all righteous behavior originates from the mind. The mind directs our actions. Proverbs 16:9, the mind of a man will plan his way. What the mind does is the mind influences our heart, our desires, our affections, and then that influences our will or our behavior. So it's important that we have a good mind, and the mind works like a computer, garbage in, garbage out. If we put good things in our mind, that will usually result in good behavior, bad things in our mind, bad behavior. So it's important. Now, I'm not saying that anyone who does these things will be a mass murderer. I'm not saying anyone who avoids these things will be totally pure. I'm just saying it's a consideration that we need to be careful with the specific movies that we watch, the television shows we view, the music we listen to, because that is putting thoughts into our mind, and a lot of it is garbage. First-person shooter games, extremely realistic today, very graphic today. I'm not saying it's a sin, but I'm saying it needs to be considered that if you get this susceptible, it kind of anesthetizes your mind in a sense where you can do these things and it simply doesn't bother you anymore. We can harden our heart. We can sear our conscience. Some interesting statistics. Nielsen research, the average child will spend 3.5 minutes each week in meaningful conversation with parents, but yet that same average child will watch 1,680 minutes of television each week, and by the time a child graduates from elementary school, will witness 8,000 murders and 200,000 violent acts. Again, two things to think about. The slaughter of the unborn. How can we say life is sacred when we can't protect the weakest among us? And the garbage that we are flooding our minds with will result in garbage in our actions. Two things to think about on this very important subject.